Reddit cult encounters by Snook. Or YouTube can fuck me over. Let's try that again. Reddit cult encounters by Snook.
Hello everyone and welcome to the video. And today we will be covering Reddit cult encounters. I originally came up with this video idea when I came across this Reddit post. Have you been involved with a cult? What was your experience? And there is some very, very interesting responses. So that's what we'll be covering in today's video. Reddit cult encounters. And I'm very excited to get into these stories, but before we get into it, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It's the channel's goal to be at 250,000 subs by the end of the year, and I think we can do it. So please subscribe, and alright. Anyways, now into the first story. I was married to a Scientologist.
No!
Obviously, I'm using a throwaway. Well, Scientology is weird. It's all-consuming, as most cults are.
Dude, we're going and swinging with Scientology right off the bat.
My ex-husband only knew and associated with people in Scientology. However, all his friends were actually very, very nice and really cool to me. I made a lot of friends through him. I never felt outwardly pressured to join Scientology, but the insidiousness was absolutely there. I'll get to that. Ex-husband was raised in it. You could say he was a second-generation Scientologist. His parents joined up back in the L. Ron Hubbard days, and they were in it. They both worked for the church as auditors. They were dirt poor. All of their money went to the church, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were so deep in debt. They had no health insurance and no money for anything except rent for their tiny, run-down apartment. That part made me the saddest. They were nice people. Now, I married him back when I was younger, more idealistic and willing to overlook major differences. I was a bit lost myself and really just looking to connect with anyone. I was always atheist, and actually really against organized religion, but he always assured me that Scientology was not something he was active in and that it wouldn't be a problem. He wasn't taking any courses all the time, we dated and were engaged, so I believed him that Scientology was more like his parents' thing than his.
That's interesting. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Especially when it comes to, I mean, you can have a spouse, a partner with a completely different belief system than you do, and you can make it work. It just depends on the situation and depends on the person, right? That is such a subjective thing that I don't want to get into because we're starting to delve into religion, right? But we're going to see if this actually still pans out. We're going to see if it still is going to be a separation, or if this is going to be something that ends up kind of just eating at him, kind of consuming him as things progress, escalating, if you will.
After we got engaged, he started telling me how a friend of his needs some help. She was training to become an auditor, that e-meter thing you hear about, and needed someone to practice on. I declined. He kept asking and insisted that it's just for her practice. It doesn't mean I'm doing Scientology, and that it would mean a lot to him. So I did it.
So hear me out. I know this is a very hard concept for the internet to grasp. No means no. Okay. If your spouse or partner says no to something, no means no. Right? Hey, honey, I'm feeling a little. What's the, is it the British word? Is Randy the word? Can I say that? I don't know. YouTube gets really weird when it goes to like slang. It's really funny when you use British slang. You're calling people just bellends and stuff in voice chat, and they don't. It's really funny because you can tell they're just like quizzing. They know you're an American. They're just like, it's just so weird coming from an American. And if your partner says no, guess what? That's no. No means no. Okay, doesn't have to be anything in related to that, right? Hey, I'm going out to Wisconsin, right? I want to see if you wanted to go. No, I'm good. I'm here. I got stuff I got to do. Okay, that's fine. You have extended the invitation. And after that, right, it is either accepted or declined. Or you have to kind of hold because there's a pause in the answer, having to think about it, right, especially going on vacation. That's how communication works. But a no is a no. And this is one of those things that, it doesn't mean anything. It's going to be an indoctrination tactic, I guarantee it, where it's going to be like, well, it's not you. But, it's so close. I mean, you weren't doing Scientology, but now we're going to have you do Scientology. It's just a scummy way to do it, right?
Okay. What a silly experience. Honestly, it's just really silly. You sit in a room with the auditor, hold these cans. Let me tell you, The rigmarole they use to get the cans set right up so they pick you up your wavelengths or whatever they call it is laughable. Lotion on the hands, squeeze the cans. That didn't work.
Can I get that? Can I get that out of context?
It is laughable. Lotion on the hands, squeeze the cans. That didn't work.
Bro, please, it's too easy. That is so low hanging fruit that it's touching the ground.
Go for a walk, drink some water, lotion again, squeeze the stupid cans, all this over and over until something on the auditor's end says it's all working now. And then you're good to go. I lied through the whole thing. They acted like I made some amazing breakthroughs. I got a floating needle, and then that was it.
See, I try to avoid stuff like this because I know if I had to go through this, I would be shitposting the entire time. Like malicious levels of shitposting. Like, oh my god. Yeah, no. One of those things, just leave me alone and I'll leave you alone.
However, I was then called over and over and over again to come back in. What the hell? I thought this was a one-time thing to help this chick out. Nope, they were all over me. They wanted 3-hour sessions, days in a row on weekdays. No wonder Scientologists are all poor as shit. They want you in constantly during work days.
Wild.
I became so disagreeable to them that they actually gave up calling me to get me in. I guess they figured me being married to one was enough to eventually get me.
So I wonder what happens. Hear me out. What happens if you go through the process, but you like have a bunch of Taco Bell beforehand, right? And you just like in the middle of the thing when they're trying to find your wavelength. What if you actually just shit your pants? Like, do you think that would offend them, or do you think that like I'm thinking in like 4 dimensions the amount of shit posts you can do. Sure, you might be seen as weird, but you know what? Sometimes the shit post is worth it. Okay. Plus, you had some really good Taco Bell. I'm actually craving Taco Bell. I might actually go get Taco Bell. Not sponsored by Taco Bell, by the way. You got to commit to the bit, but goddamn.
The Scientologists on the lower portion of the bridge tend to know nothing about the Xenu stuff. I asked them and they acted like they've never heard of it. I guess you don't get to read that tech till way later.
Yeah.
A few 100,000 deep. The overriding insidiousness I saw was the learned ability to scam people. I witnessed a Scientologist-owned business get taken down by the feds for frauding their clients.
Wow.
The reason I divorced him was because he stole a large sum of money from my account that was not to be touched.
Oh, dude, I hate that stuff because like that. Like, if I was still in finance, I'd have to deal with something like that in regards to, hey, I need to remove my husband from my account, or I need to make a non-authorized signer, and because it's potentially at this point, like it is clearly a domestic thing, but you know, on inference, it's a domestic situation. That's one of those like I in my position would have to defer them out to a physical location so that way they could they would deal with it there. Because the moment I hear of something like divorce, separation, domestic situation, it gets really rough. At least what I was doing in finance.
It just vanished and he had nothing to say for it. He opened 2 credit cards in my name and maxed them. He put me into financial ruin. It was a disaster.
No respect.
Sorry if this was rambling and all over the place. It's been a number of years since, and I haven't really talked about it in a while. My mom almost got involved with one when I was little.
I just like... Dude, all I'm going to say... I got bullied in high school for playing Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, right? You're going to tell me to moist up my hands with low. You're going to tell me to lube up my hands. Hold on to some cans. And I just bro, it's so low hanging, and I try the best I can to give everyone a fair shake, right? Yeah, people come from all different I just, dude, just, you know what? Instead of lotion, I'll just bring in some Astroglide. Oh man, malicious shit posting would in fact ensue.
She met this elderly couple who were a part of the church and would come over every Thursday and Friday to say prayer, talk about God, and read the Bible with my mom. I thought it was nice because my mom is a big Christian, so I thought it was nice she finally had someone to talk to.
Right.
But then things started getting odd. They started getting more aggressive, so to say. My mom told me one day that the man in the couple was feeling something was not right in our household. He never said what he meant until a week later. He said my dad and I were not right with God and were too worldly.
Here we go again. The I am holier than thou. Yes, this is what's wrong. Oh, yes, the strife in your life now makes sense. You know, you need to cut out certain things in your life and we will drive you towards salvation. Bro, come on. At least take me out to a lobster and steak dinner first. Get me that surf and turf before you try to sell me on the cult pitch.
And that my mom should leave us. She didn't really let this get to her though, mainly because I think she was lonely. They then started asking for money or a seed. We were super broke at the time, but my mom still gave them somewhere between $5 to $10 a week. But then it got really, really weird. I finally met them one day because I was stuck home from school due to fake being sick. My mom suggested I meet them, and I did. They started doing that thing where one person will be praying really loudly and telling the devil off while the other one was behind me. Next thing you know, she's poking my forehead. I didn't know what she was doing, so I asked her to please stop. She kept going until my mom made her stop. The lady said I am too worldly and that my time will be soon.
I'm assuming this is trying to interact with the concept of the chakra on the forehead, right? I think it's the crown chakra specifically. Like, it feels like we're starting to mix a bunch of different things together in this. I mean, it's definitely preachy. It's definitely showboating, right? To have the person wildly, sermon, right? Wildly tell, in this situation, the devil off. And there's just a lot going here. Like, to me, this is one of those that I just lose interest. Like, there's so many things at play here that, like, it's just radicals. It's extremists, I would argue, right? At least I would say it this way. I mean, I know people like to joke about the Amish and stuff because someone's mentioning it in chat, but I mean, like, as far as I'm aware, like, they're pretty chill. Sure, there's, certain situations, individuals that could be not chill. At the end of the day, like, I literally do not care. Believe in the flying spaghetti monster. I don't care, okay? When you start hurting other people or you start doing this, that's when I start to have an issue.
Okay, here's how I know they were a cult. Remember how I said they suggested my mom leave? They tried to make her leave one day, saying she could live with them, that they have a big house with their church on the property, and a few other members stay there too.
Classic. With cults, they will try to separate you from others. They will try to isolate you because they want that dependency on them from you.
My mom obviously said no, but they were not going to have it. They basically tried to mentally force my mom into going. She said it worked a little, but she knew what was right. She called the police, and the police made them get off the property while they screamed, yelling, "Have fun burning in hell," and other like terms. 2 years passed, and I was watching the news with my mom when, wouldn't you know it, the couple were on the news. They were charged with attempted kidnapping of another family's 2 kids.
Wild, dude. And that's just the escalation of zealotry, right? I think zealotry is the word that I can use here. Like, these people are just so far gone. It's honestly kind of sad, but it's one of those that I just kind of, cross my arms, kind of furrow my brow, and I'm just like, I mean, what were you expecting? Like, these people are idiots. They're trying to manipulate others for their own benefit and solely their own benefits.
Yup. I was born and raised in a cult as well. Left the week before I turned 18. I don't particularly want to name it, as though not well known. It can definitely be Googled. And I've been hiding this part of my life too long to be able to open up about it now.
I mean, that's honestly fair. That is part of moving on. Like, I can respect that decision.
A lot of what I read in this post or in the reply sounds familiar. Praying, fasting, guilt, prophecy, end times, guilt, isolation, communal living, guilt, thieving, self-loathing, and guilt. I'm big sorry. Difference between the...
Did he just say thieving? That is tithing, my guy. I'm sure he on the playthrough recognized that it was tithing. Yeah, that is not pronounced thieving. That is tithing.
OP's experience, and the one I was raised in, is that S word was highly encouraged, and that's putting it mildly. Enforced is not the right word, but it's the first one that comes to mind. In my opinion, second generation cult kids have the absolute worst. We didn't ask for it. We literally didn't know any better. That was our normal. By the time second generation kids come around, the cult is still new enough that later generations haven't been able to mellow it out either, and small enough that horrible practices and abuse are able to pass under the radar.
Right.
Abuse was so much a part of my life. physical, S-word, mental, you name it. That's when I left and started socializing with regular folks. I couldn't process what real socializing, dating, or an active S life really is. I couldn't understand. Couldn't believe it, couldn't accept it. I have been locked in rooms for 3 days and nights to fast and pray. I've been denied contact with other humans for weeks or even months to get closer to God. I was given to men by request. I was once held down by 4 men while a group of maybe a dozen men exorcised me.
I don't know. That's one of those I'd actually really like to understand the actual process of an alleged exorcism. It's one of those that has fascinated me, but it's also one of those that it starts getting into territories that, once again, like I try to be as apolitical and a-religious as possible, right? I definitely have my spicy moments, right? But I mean, I think across the board, like something like this, especially when seen through the lens of a cult atmosphere, it's like I want to understand the reason why. Like, why have they fallen so far? It's not that we're arguing that they're bad people. It's not that we're arguing that this is a cult, right? We're not arguing that. What becomes my fascination is understanding the why, but also what comes with that is the understanding that sometimes in certain situations, if you understand the why, you might not understand sanity anymore. And that is a very real concern.
They believed I was possessed by a demon because of my inability to be like them, to get with the program. I was spanked, beaten, and whipped most of my life. Simply put, I was terrified my entire childhood. I lived every second of my life in fear.
As it turns out, people actually listen when they are too tired or too fearful to do anything.
Anyway, all this to say, I absolutely understand you and feel for you. And anyone else who has suffered this, and I wish I had advice on how to recover, move on, be free of it. Just remember that you are free of it. They have no power over you anymore. Always remember that and enjoy every damn breath of air you get twice as much as you should, simply because it's a free breath. Good luck. And in case you were wondering, no, I'm absolutely not religious in any way, shape, or form. I believe religion is a cancer. No offense is intended.
Look, the only thing I'm going to comment on this is Poster is absolutely right. They have no power over you, especially when you're out of the situation. Yes, there may be certain larger cults who may try to go after you, try to go after your employment. They only have so much power, and they really only have as much power as you give them. You are your own individual. You are able to make your own cognitive decisions. You are able to say that they cannot have power over you anymore. You can be free of it.
I was raised without ever going to church. The only experience I had with religion was being told about the Christian God and that we are apparently Methodists. I had no idea what church was supposed to be like. I joined a non-denominational youth group when I was 12. It's a national group, but this particular church hosting it was batshit crazy. Mm-hmm. The shirts we wore to group were all cotton because mixing fibers is a sin.
What?
They would take the girls aside and tell us that accidentally showing your bra straps was tempting the boys into our word.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I will actually rant. I will actually get angry because that's not how that works. Humans have control. Men have control. Women have control. Just because you show ankle doesn't mean that you're inviting something, or that, because you showed ankle, that whatever you got was because you were asking for it. No, I'm not touching that. No, that is such flawed ideology. No. No. Nope. Not doing it. That's bait.
Grown women were encouraged not to work in favor of being a wife and a mother. And birth control was considered a word. The fun videos we watched were Ken Ham lectures on, as he called it, evolution. And they were trying to begin running a Pray the Gay Away camp.
Oh, I forgot those existed. Wow. Oh, wow, that's been a hot minute, hasn't it? Ooh. I guess technically, remember YouTube terms of service, right? YouTube terms of service gets really odd and they can be kind of picky. Sometimes they can even hit things that you think are fine. Yeah.
I finally left at 14 when the church leaders took me aside and told me that because I had a single mother and she didn't come to the church, I was surely hellbound. To save my soul, they were going to find my adoptive parents in the congregation. So I would need to tell the police my mom was abusing me so I would be free to adopt.
No.
I never went back, But even as crazy as they weren't even the worst group in town.
Dude, you got to get out of Dodge. Like that, they're not even the worst group in town. That's wild. Wow. No, this is just objectively bad. Like objectively bad. This is incredibly radicalized. This is incredibly zealous. These people are clearly just they're not held accountable in any way, shape, or form. So therefore, they are allowed to escalate. They're allowed to fester as problems.
I was born and raised in a cult and considered myself a member up until I left my parents' home at the age of 18. The group I was associated with is not well known, but the effects on the members are tragic and undeniable. We were literally brainwashed. We had weekly services with a set program, 3 hymns, prayer, ceremony, hymn, announcements, main message, hymn, and prayer.
Is that sermonette? I don't think that's pronounced ceremony. I would pronounce that sermonette, but I could also be wrong.
It never altered from that layout. As well, the messages we would hear were often videotaped sermons from maybe 5 main people at headquarters. The topics were extremely narrow. Prophecy, the end is coming, self-improvement, all of you suck and you should hate yourselves, setting ourselves apart, don't talk to worldly people, they will taint you.
Ah, there it is. There's the isolationism. Yes. You are with us. We are your salvation. If you talk to these worldly people, they will taint you. You understand clearly, right? You can't be talking to that riffraff, those rabble-rousers. No. You are safe here, dear cultist. I hate it. I actually hate it. Because I hate it because it's like throwing popcorn at your screen, right? Like at the type of like at the moment in a movie where you're really upset at characters and you're like just talk to each other. And you're throwing popcorn. That's me. It's because I see what they're doing. I understand what they're doing, and sometimes they do it really badly. Either way, whether they do it well or badly, that's not really. That's a very specific discussion to be had. I mean, either way, it's really awful. No, that's rough. There was something I also wanted to comment on here. The end prophecy, the end was coming. So hear me out on this one, and that's fine. You don't have to answer. You don't have to comment. How many friends, how many buddies do you have, right? That if they were told tomorrow that there was 24 hours left, right? Some event, macro, whatever, right? I don't know. Maybe 40K happens. The warp just envelops the planet. I don't know. Use your imagination, right? There's 24 hours left. How many people would just go, hell yeah, and have an all-night drinking binge, right? It's really funny to me because we have so much about, prophecy and the end of times, but we're in a situation where many people would hear that the world is ending tomorrow and would be like, hell yeah, I'm in. I'm super in. We live in a society.
Ourselves apart. Don't talk to worldly people. They will taint you. There were many ways in which we were indirectly encouraged to harm ourselves. Many people looked down upon modern medicine and felt that using it was a way of turning away from God.
Yes, my bad. I forgot that getting medicine, getting a vaccine for polio means that you are less of a human being. Yes. How could I forget? How dare you not be an actual vegetable because polio ravaged your body? How dare you?
Slapping him in the face, making it clear he wasn't needed. I personally know people who died for their faith, waiting for God to heal them. On the other hand, when any of the main leaders fell ill, they were immediately rushed off to receive medical care. They controlled their diet. We pretty much were kosher, though they denied all influence or association from or with Jewish people. There were annual days of fasting, and whenever the leader would scare up enough drama within the members, they would declare a church-wide fast so we could all get closer to God and resolve our issues. We fasted when the church's income was said to be dropping. We fasted when leaders were ill. We fasted when people died. We had our own personal fast for the hell of it, or when we felt especially guilty and out of touch with God. Parents were encouraged to get their children involved as young as possible. My parents told me I started observing the annual fast when I was 3 years old.
Yes. Get the children involved as soon as possible because it is normalized. The children just think this is normal. It is clearly normal to go many days in a row, many days throughout the year without eating. I hate it. It's not even done well. I hate it regardless, but it's so bad. Like, they should actually feel bad. These leaders should actually, feel bad, straight up. Like, L status.
I remember one year when my brother was 2 or 3. At one point during the day, he just broke down sobbing because he was so thirsty. Oh yeah, We abstained from food and drink.
Yeah.
We got obscenely dehydrated every time. Looking back, I just don't understand how a parent can behave that way. They were so sex negative. I can't even describe. We spent so much time and energy frantically thinking I can't think about sex that it was all we thought about. It was evil, dirty, and wrong. It would hurt if we weren't married. I literally built up so much fear over it that when I did finally have S-word as an unmarried adult, I had developed vaginismus, a sexual pain condition. The cause is often psychological, in my case, being so afraid of it hurting, that it hurt, which further fed into my fear.
Yeah, that's... Especially when you start dealing with psychology. I don't know enough about the condition myself. That is rough. Like, that's... And that's like, it has effects down the line, right? Stuff like this has effects down the line. This is traumatizing. This is how someone gets messed up. This is how somebody just breaks. It's not... No one should ever have to be subject to this. It's not fair. You can argue that the world isn't fair, but at the same time, like, people like this, like these leaders, should be held accountable, right? Like, oh, well, they want to go get medical care when they get sick. Well, it sucks, man. I mean, we heard about we heard about what you had, and we do know that your views on this are, unfortunately, that you think that modern medicine, is a blight. So therefore, we're not willing to treat you. But then again, I think that gets into doctors, medical professionals, and willingly not providing care, and then there even then could potentially be a lawsuit for discrimination. It just turns into a mess. Like, there's not really a good answer for it, in my opinion. Bro, it's fine. People get Henry. I'm going to censor it that way, right? People get flushed. They get elevated, so to speak. They see the dude walking down the street. They see the fancy lady online, right? And they feel things. Grats, it's normal. Don't be weird about it. Literally the best. Like, that's literally all it is. Don't be weird about it, right? Like, if you're out in the middle of public, maybe you're not scrolling through, I don't know, OnlyFans, right? Or maybe you're not looking at, jacked, chiseled dudes in Speedos, right? Probably not the best or mixed company. If it's in its house, if you're even with your roommates, depending on what your situation is, or with your partner, who cares? Like, why? Why should I care? Why should I care if Gary down the street is banging Matthew? I literally do not care. Who should care? Okay. Now, if Jessica and Samantha are at a concert, right, and they're effectively just groping each other and all over each other, okay, maybe get a room, right? Maybe that's the best thing you guys need right now. Maybe not in public, especially if there's minors present, right? Kissing's one thing that I'm talking like full on, like on each other. Some clothes start to come off, right? Maybe get a room at that point, but that's just a common decency kind of thing, right? Plus, the room is probably going to have more amenities for you, right? It's got a shower, it's got a bathtub, right? It's got beds, okay? You probably have a suitcase or probably something with rope in it, okay? You can do so many more things. It doesn't have to be in public like that, okay? And that's not me shaming, right? Not me shaming. It's pointing out there's times and places for these things, right? Don't be weird about it. It's fine.
There was actually an entire message once where one of the leaders took on the subject, are we a cult? And he actually went through a checklist for us. His conclusion that we were a cult, but that it was a good thing. We should be proud, only not. Pride is a sin. We should be pleased. You had to be baptized before a minister would marry you. You couldn't be baptized and marry someone else who wasn't. You couldn't marry outside the church. Some ministers wouldn't baptize you if they thought your only incentive was to get married. There were rampant cases of SA from the leadership, but we were always too fearful to report it. Always taught that it must have, in some way, been our fault.
And that's why I very clearly, because of that passage, that's why I say that I'm not shaming, right? That's why I say that, just don't be weird about it, right? Because it gets into this mentality very quickly. When you start shaming people, when you start, treating them as lesser than, you start getting into the mentality of, well, it's their fault. They asked for this. No, it's not. I've been over my experience as a male in certain things, okay? It wasn't my fault. It wasn't, okay? I didn't ask for the stuff that happened to me. And that should be normalized. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether if you're an F-35, whether you're a toast, I don't care, right? Whatever you are, right? Whatever you identify as, you didn't ask for that. That's not how that works. And shame culture goes a long way into feeding into this mentality.
Traditional gender roles were enforced, i.e., women stay home, pop out babies, cook, and clean. Men were to work and support the homes. Having children, and lots of them, was strongly encouraged. Be fruitful and multiply, and all that shit. Adoption was frowned upon, even for those who were unable to have their own children. So many families were living in poverty because there were just too many children to take care of.
Yeah.
God forbid that any of them have a medical condition that required constant treatment.
Wild.
We were robbed on a regular basis. They called it tithing. Not only did we give 10% of our entire income, but we were also to set a second 10% aside to be used as a 7-day religious convocation of sorts every year.
Convention.
And on every third year, we would give an additional 10% to the church.
Bro, 30%, okay? Look, back in ye olden days, I say ye olden days, how many of y'all remember rent shouldn't be more than 30% of your income, right? Or at least that was the mentality, right? We'll curtail that discussion there. The mentality, right, is going to be that rent is 30. You're effectively paying them rent, or the concept of rent as it is in the greater, like, U.S., cultural, psychological sphere, right? 30% going to people who are actively starving you, who are admitting that they're a cult, that are committing just atrocious acts. 30% of your income. Bro.
Imagine losing 20% of your income every year and 30% every third year. Imagine being poor to begin with. Imagine being told you are poor because you have been literally stealing from God by not diligently paying your tithes. I could go on forever. There is so much.
I wonder what happens. Like, how do they like rationalize crackheads, right? Or like people. How do I word it? Oh, but you're not paying your tithes. You're seen as not providing. What happens if someone just gets addicted to crack and they get like banned from like Walmart? They get trespassed from Walmart like 30 times. I wonder how they classify that. Like, that's wild. Thomas Tourette's excellent username.
I want to try to be concise and still give a proper breakdown of my time growing up in a cult. I'm going to start by breaking down the ideology. Second coming of Christ. They believe the second coming is and was alive.
Oh.
He was a Korean man who went by the name Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
Oh no, I actually have heard of these guys recently. Yeah, if you've never heard of Moon, they're big. They are massive.
He was given the mission by Jesus in a vision when he was 16 years old on a mountaintop. And it is his purpose to create an example of the ideal family, so all may shape their families in its likeness and create an ideal world.
No. See, he went on vacation when he was 16, and he was climbing up the mountain, and his tour guide was named Jesus, okay? And Jesus was saying how much he loved his family. That's what happened, right?
Restoration of the fall. Jesus forgives your sins, but what about restoring humanity to what it was before the fall by paying spiritual indemnities and cleansing humanity of those sins in the first place? Their idea of an indemnity is almost like paying karma forward. You can put yourself through misery to either pay for your past mistakes of humanity or to ensure good things will happen in the future. You can pay indemnity by, number 1, living in a van for years and years on one of their task forces, fundraising by selling candles or wind chimes, sometimes more than 14 hours a day.
Yikes.
Getting an arranged marriage, after abstaining from absolutely any contact with the opposite sex all your life by the Reverend himself, or now your parents, thereby overcoming the temptation of the fall by denying your desires and obeying the church completely. Actually, this is the most important aspect of the church, that you get matched and blessed, their word for marriage. It is the only thing that will eventually restore humanity. 3, converting other members. 4, doing hundreds of thousands of bows to a picture of Reverend Moon every night for X amount of days.
See, this is why I actually hate English and why I say English is 5 languages in the trench coat that beat other languages up for their cool stuff. Because that's technically not incorrect to read a sentence and think it says bows, right? But that's the context here is it's bows, thousands of bows to a picture, right? I hate English so much. Yes, I speak it. Contrary to popular belief, because I feel like I can't speak English. I feel like I barely string together coherent sentences. God, I hate English.
5, taking cold showers every day for X days.
Ugh.
6, fasting. You can drink water for a providential number of days, either 3, 7, 21, or 40. Note, you must do a 7-day fast before you get to get married. 7, giving money offerings to the church. The church also started changing for ancestor liberation in the last couple decades. Just like old school Catholics, you pay to have your dear old granddad hoisted out of the pits of hell. Since the church is Korean, they have deep resentment towards the Japanese, and ancestor liberation can be thousands of dollars per person liberated. For Americans, it was a little over 100, I think.
Was Shinzo Abe, was it his dealings with this, or was it another cult? I know that one of the cults over there played a role in the action that was taken against Shinzo Abe, because the perpetrator was saying that it was one of their family members had just donated all of their stuff, all of their life savings to a cult like this. I don't remember if it was this one specifically. It might actually be a different one. I can't remember offhand. They're very, very large. Some of these are very, very large. Some of these cults can be very large. And they definitely attract some influential people, even just dealing with them, right? Whether that's through donations, whether that's just recognition. Like there's a lot there.
8. Beat yourself to repetitive chants at an approved spirit cleansing event.
Okay.
9. Or basically denying yourself of any human comfort or need for some time. Some do sleep deprivation conditions. There's a lot else, but I can't keep going.
Oh.
Growing up in the church, there are countless strange rituals in the church. Like on your birthday, you and your whole family has to get up at 5 a.m., go to your altar of the Reverend Moon, say a prayer, and offer food. When the ritual is almost over, the birthday kid usually has to take the food and offer some to each of the family members, and you always leave some on the altar. There are countless stories told to the second generation of members who left the church and immediately got hit by a bus or became prostitutes and died of ODing or committed S-word out of guilt.
Interesting. See, this is the scary part when people start talking about cults that can be large, is that some things can be seen as very coincidental, such as they immediately got hit by a bus, or they seemingly took themselves out of the game out of guilt. And that's the problem, especially when you have a lot of influence. And even if it's not true, right? These are all just allegations, right? I'll treat these as allegations. The fact that the allegations come up in the first place from your size and what you do as a platform, that becomes a problem to me.
Koreans. Korea in the church is seen as the new Jerusalem. Koreans being the new chosen people. Every leader in the church is a Korean, despite the religion's heavy unification of world cultures and religions overtones. Koreans often were only matched to other Koreans. None of Moon's kids were allowed to marry anyone other than a Korean. Japanese members have always been the church's cash cows, guilting them into paying more in tithing and overcharging them for everything. Americans got their fair share of that too. The church often comes up with a new ceremony like a holy wine ceremony, while drinking the new blessed wine, usually juice, will heal you of all your sins. That, of course, you have to pay big money to get into. Sometimes they just make a big plea for extra money, like their total life offering, which was something like if you paid the church $16,000, you would never have to pay them for anything again, which was a lie. Some members took out second mortgages on their homes to pay these offerings.
That's wild, dude. Like, dude, there's so much I could do with $16,000. There's so much I could do.
Wrists are seriously hurting from typing this much, so I'll leave some space for questions. I haven't even made a dent in the beliefs, rituals, or culture of the church yet. I will say, in response to people in this thread who ask how someone could fall for this and how people can stay in it for so long, cults like this never approach it like, hey, a Korean guy is the Messiah. You want to join? They take you through steps, almost like Scientology, but not so clearly defined. The Unification Church was going around in America in the 70s preaching for true love and family values. Stuff many people, especially people with Christian backgrounds, can get behind.
Wait a minute. Wait. If everything can be seen as a threat to national security, so hear me out on this. Would a large international cult going around the U.S. and trying to indoctrinate people, would that not be seen as a threat to national security? Like what if like Aum Shinrikyo, just the remnants that are left, right? Because it still exists, right? We don't have whoever was heading it, right? But like Aum Shinrikyo, there are people that still follow that way, right? What if they just started advertising the U.S., right? Like what? Bro, we declared, like, stuff that I do, right? just as benign as some of it could do, right? Since I do firearm stuff with an international audience, right? Dude, that can get bought for national security hypothetically. That's wild, because that feels like a huge national security thing, and we declare national security on other things. So that's a little bit of a wild situation to me.
Church does have heavy Christian influence. So much of the language is the same. But they'll start discussing these things with you, like the evils in the world. If Jesus restored the world, then why would there need to be a second coming? We should prepare ourselves for the next Messiah. A Messiah is exactly what we need. How else can we right the wrongs of this world? Once you get going on that, you can just pump them with all the same religious feel-good stuff. God is our Father. God is watching out for you. He wants the best for you. God hurts when you don't do what's right. And eventually, God becomes some kind of emotionally sensitive dude you have to coddle and take care of. Then once your members are pumped, they're living in vans, they're trying to recruit other people, that's when you start with the deeper shit. The Messiah is here. The tension has been building to this moment for literally years. The members are overjoyed and can't wait to do anything this guy says so they can be like Jesus' first disciples. No one thinks they're a victim. They think they're literally saving the world.
It's potent. Like, it's a potent way to go about that, right? I mean, it's one of those things, like, it's done in a way that's so subversive. And even then, like, they try to speak to logic, right? So, like, if we're talking, I could do the exact same thing, right? I mean, like, if we want to talk about the situation of making a better world, right? Well, why is the world the way it is, right? And, I try to appeal to your ethos, your pathos, and your logos, right? And, try to have a conversation with you to make you feel like you're valued. And then I start pitching ideologies such as, well, why do we even need the concept of Messiah? Why can't we all just do things ourselves? Why can't we as a collective get together, and work together for a better future? And then, 5 years later, suddenly you got communism. Like... This stuff just ends up snowballing. It's like, the questions on how can this happen don't take into account how it's done. And I think the poster is absolutely right on this. They don't take into account how it's done and how potent some of this stuff can be, because it worms its way into your brain.
It appealed to a lot of people who were raised Christian but were dissatisfied with the contradictions or shortcomings of their parents' religion.
Right, there we go there. Yeah.
When I was in my early teens, my parents had this midlife crisis. They were always religious, but they encountered this group that took it to a whole nother level. Certain facets of their faith were somewhat neglected, and their marriage wasn't very stable at this time, so they grasped onto this and took us along for the ride. It all started out with a summer camp, something innocent sounding enough. There were about 35 other boys going to it from all over the country. I would later realize this summer camp wasn't really about swimming, playing games or sports, going on day trips to places like Niagara Falls or Washington, D.C. It was the first stage of their recruitment to join. Most of the children there were from large families that were intimately familiar with the group. A lot of their older or younger brothers were attending the camp. Most of them had gone for years because the purpose of the program was to draw in boys to their boarding school. In fact, the camp took place at the boarding school campus. After the summer program was over, my brother wanted to go there for high school instead of the local public school. I had really no desire to go to the public school after the absolutely horribly 8th grade year I had at the middle school next door. So that, coupled with the pressure of my parents and brother, had me going to the boarding school that September. Things started off decently. There wasn't much pressure, but it was a very religious school. Prayers several times a day. There was the option to go to church every morning, and the instruction was completely from their unique Catholic perspective in every way. I would attend this school for 3 years, 2 on, 1 off, in my graduate year.
My high school had, I think it was seminary, I think. I don't know enough about it. I thought it took this place of a class. I didn't even go to a religious high school. I just went to a high school that just like Gratz. There happens to be, influence in the area or around there. But yeah, I guess the way I understood it was just like Gratz. If you want to do religious things, you take a class period and just go do it. I don't know. I never got it. Never looked too deep into it. Just one of those things that if everyone's fine with it, I don't care. Right? Go take your period. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you believe in. Literally do not care. It's when there's favoritism showcased, right? It's like, well, Timmy, you got a bag of Sour Patch Kids, but what about Stacy? What if she wants Sour Patch Kids? Well, Stacy can't have them because I have my Sour Patch Kids, right? cool. Okay, so we're allowing Timmy to have Sour Patch Kids because like their mom gave him it, right? But why can't we allow Stacy, Greg, anyone else to have Sour Patch Kids, right? Oh, well, you can't have those. That's when I start taking issues because it's not fair at that point.
The school really served as the second stage of their organizational recruitment. Not everyone who attended joined, was expected to join, but those who showed enough fervor or interest were groomed to becoming full-time members. When I was 16, I knew full well I wasn't ever going to join. But my brother did. I'm not sure if he is gay or just never had that much luck with girls, but he decided to forego all that for the cause and join right after he completed high school. For the most part, I never really realized just how far out this organizational was until years later when I had a crisis in my own religious faith and became a non-believer and saw how they treated the most people who left the group over time. Mm-hmm. Most, if not all, who leave the group don't lose their faith, but there's a lot of ostracizing. While in the school, we did a lot of things with the rest of the group, including protesting campaigns for things we didn't fully understand, attended some of their Saturday meetings at their headquarters, events, conferences, marches, etc. Their methods were not extreme, but they fostered a severe us versus the world mentality. Rock music was satanic. Anyone who didn't embrace our version of belief and morals was a monster or horrible person. Everything was seen in black and white, and they couldn't comprehend how somebody could disagree on one thing with them, yet agree in many other things.
I mean, like, that's the thing. Everything in moderation, right? Like, I mean, it's fine for certain things to be black and white, right? You're an adult of 35 years old talking inappropriately with someone under the age of 18. Bro, no, stop that. Okay, no, that's... No, that's pretty black and white, pretty clear cut, right? No, that's pretty no bueno, right? Like, some things are, yeah, black and white like that. But a lot of things are that infinity of gray in between, right? Like, I'm trying not to get super heavy on the topic. What's a good one? Is it ethical... God, I'm really gravitating towards the one subject that would actually get my point across. So we're going to try to dance around the subject a little bit. Is it ethical to ever take another life? I mean, I'd argue that's not a very black and white answer. I'd argue there can be black and white answers, but is that not in the infinity of gray in between? Right? And if your answer is no, that's never ethical. I mean, what is your what's your opinion on the military, right? What's your opinion on somebody who's, being accosted on the street, trying to be taken away, and in self-defense, they end up getting away, but the other person unfortunately doesn't, right? Like, I mean, then that leads into other things. Is this person say maybe like, do they have an anti-war sentiment? Do they have something like that? Did the person entrap the assailants? Right? I mean, then we get to a nitty-gritty all day, right? Exactly, chat. Like you're saying, it depends on the situation. There are things that are black and white. Absolutely. There are things that are not black and white. Attraction in itself, right? Attraction is incredibly subjective, right? Me, not a huge fan of pixie cuts. Other people, oh my God, love pixie cuts, right? Cool, right? Pretty subjective, right? Attraction, not black and white. Pretty varied, right? And then you can have things that in general can be black and white, right? Like, oh yeah, is it ethical to take another life, right? Generally, you can say, no, it is not ethical, asterisk. But if the other person has enough understanding of the situation and wants to have a genuine good faith, discussion, okay, cool. Then we can talk about, ethics and that. We can talk about just following orders. We can talk about situations where that would be reasonable or rational. You see how that can evolve from that? So it could be two sides of the same coin. It can be black and white on the surface, or it can be varied at the bottom, but vice versa. Something can seem like it's so varied, but at the same time, it's black and white, right? It may seem like you're, going back to attraction, right? Sure, some things could be varied in their attraction, right? But at the end of the day, it could be very black and white binary, and do you find this attractive? Yes, no, right? It just depends. As chat summed it up, it depends on the situation.
At their meetings, they did a lot of patting themselves on the back by talking of their campaigns and the supposed success of them, how they were going to bring the world back to order, which according to them meant their version of Catholicism. Most of them didn't even like the Pope at the time because he wasn't fire and brimstone enough. Speaking of that, a lesser talked about subject publicly, but strongly believed and discussed privately, was the world was going to enter the period of death, destruction, and end times that would last many years. Even they prepared for it in some ways by building a sort of bomb shelter in one of the buildings. This would then be followed by a 1,000-year reign of Mary, in which they would lead the world back to religion, and it would be happy times and glory to be had for all. My brother even bought into this stuff a lot when he was younger, mocking me for my interest in technology because it wasn't going to do you any good when the nukes fall and there's no electricity.
I mean, I would disagree inherently. I mean, use of technology, especially when used correctly, allows you to build more skills, right? You can use a phone to understand how things work, right? You can use YouTube, like you're watching, dear viewer. You can use YouTube to learn specific skills and things that you couldn't otherwise, right? Whereas before, you might be limited by, oh, well, there's not really this specific craftsman in this area, right? Or there's not this specific way to understand and educate yourself on this topic, right? Like, I understand the perspective coming with, oh yeah, it's going to do you no good when there's no electricity. Okay, but what did you learn in the time you were using technology? Are you able to make some other form of technology or a mockery of technology with bare bones components and parts?
This was probably just a harmless tease on his part, but it always irritated me that he was actually thought living like a hermit was the best, most productive use of our lives. Or that foregoing technology was wise because you might have to live without it at some point. As it is, my parents still like this group. I see my brother once, maybe twice a year, and I don't really communicate with anyone there anymore. For years, though, my brother didn't want to visit us. He was always terrible about planning it and acted like it wasn't important. It did bother my parents that he had separated himself from us to such an extent. But now that they are more religious than ever, they see it as a good thing he's doing there.
Well, it's also a tactic, right? Take the children, take over the children's minds, and then the hearts of the parents will follow. Not that it's right.
I'm surprised there aren't more former Children of God or the Family International babies posting on this thread. I was born.
Yeah, that name is very familiar to me.
And raised in the COG or TFI, and I'm convinced it is or was one of the most detrimental cults out there because of the way their doctrines were weaved into every tiny area of people's lives. Everything was dictated by the leadership and controlled by peer pressure. It was a communal cult. Hive mentality was rampant. The type of food you ate, the way you dressed, who you lived with, the education you received, the movies you watched, the music you listened to, who you had sex with, who you married. Everything was controlled.
Interesting. It's almost like we have evidence about authoritarian groups and what they like to do and what the cause and effect is of engaging in these authoritarian practices that hyper-control people's lives. All I'm going to say is that it's out here. I need to remember which specific cult they are. Their name is not unfamiliar to me, though, and I know that there's a lot tied to them.
There was absolutely no real free will allowed, and very minimal contact with the outside world happened. Except if you were asking people for money or trying to convert them to Christianity/the cult. I left when I was in my early 20s, and it's only been a few years since then, so I'm still trying to unlearn a lot of things. I decided to go to college and get an education, and I'm so miserable because basic things like how to study for an exam or how to interact with your professor are completely foreign concepts to me. I didn't find out until college that I'm pretty good at science and math, subjects that were highly discouraged in the group, or if taught at all were either very simplistic. Math only went up to basic algebra if you were lucky. Or taught with such a religious or creationist spin that it's unrecognizable as science. Someone actually posted excerpts from the biology textbook I had in high school here on Reddit a while ago, and everyone was commenting, haha, those are all lies and not real science. And I'm like, well, fuck.
No.
I like to imagine that if I had regular schooling when I was younger, maybe I could have been an engineer or an astronaut or something awesome. People are probably going to counter that statement with a, it's never too late to try, platitude. I'd like to say, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Forget dating. I have more sexual knowledge and experience under my belt than most people my age, and I don't have a clue what normal dating looks like.
Bro, like, I did not need to be called out like this. Like, wow, why are we doing this, OP? All I'm gonna say is it gives me, it just, I don't know, it gives me an aneurysm when people come across stuff and like, what does it say for it? What does that mean? Bro, come on now. Please tell me you know how to communicate. That's one of those I don't let go. And that's not to be mean to people, right? Like sometimes some people just don't know. I feel like I have this oddly vast knowledge base of maybe useful, maybe not useful information. But yeah, no, actually interacting with other people is not something I do very well.
Sex is synonymous with intimacy. It's synonymous with control. I'm terrified of getting into a relationship because I know that it would be so ridiculously easy for someone to abuse their power over me.
Fact.
When you're raised to always say yes, you have no idea what a struggle it is to say no.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that's the factual, right? Saying no can be hard to a lot of people, especially if you feel peer pressured into it, right? Let's say that your marriage is on the rocks, or say that you're going through a rough time in your relationship, and your partner really wants to have some intimate time, right? And you just don't feel either up to it. You don't feel that it would be good. You feel like this is something that you don't really want to do, but you feel kind of pressured and coerced into it, right? Because maybe this can ignite some kind of spark in, or maybe this can lead to some things good, right? It's very hard to say no, and that's why when somebody does say no, it needs to be taken seriously.
When people find out about this cult thing, that usually gets focused on the most is the sex aspect of it. It was literally a sex cult. But for me, the worst part of it is having no frame of reference for connecting with other people outside the group. I can forget the bad things that happened and just get on with my life, but it's difficult knowing how to make friends and build a life outside of TFI. I just don't get most of what people talk about. I've only got a few years of movies, music, pop culture history in my brain, and can't really relate to how other people act or react to things. I didn't have any of those normal experiences like high school, dating, going to prom, etc. My best friends are former TFI people because I can't seem to make real friends out here in the great wide jungle of the world. I wonder how I will ever be able to get close to people when they will never be able to comprehend the experiences I've gone through. And at the same time, I can't relate to their experiences either.
That definitely is a very detrimental thing when trying to live your life, when trying to understand how others operate, but knowing that other people will not understand your struggles. And I mean, like, there's been things where, like, things I've experienced that other people haven't. And it's hard to have that understanding. It's hard to, like, try to feel like other people can understand certain things that I've been through. I know for me, which is not as extreme as this situation, for me, it's just come down to there's people that are just never going to understand. And certain people might, and with people you feel comfortable with and you can learn to trust, yes, you can absolutely discuss these kinds of things, or especially discuss it in like a counseling or therapy, right? People aren't going to get it sometimes. And that's not necessarily their fault. I had normal experiences like high school, right? I didn't have prom similar to them, and they didn't have the high school experience altogether. It leads to just everybody being an individual, everyone being different. Sure, people can, kind of be a collective, right? Like this cult, for instance, everyone kind of feels like they have the same mentality. So therefore, you enter a situation in which everybody is kind of this unified collective, it becomes hard, especially in a post-virus world where, like, just look at how things were 5-ish, 6-ish years ago, right? Remember when the whole Area 51 thing, remember that was before the virus hit, right? Area 51, everyone lining up to go storm Area 51 to find Shrek 5 on VHS, right? And think about how interconnected people used to be and how, maybe it wasn't necessarily the best, but we did talk to each other, right? And that's something that I think has ultimately been lost. And it's something that, I don't know. I have this odd ability because I went to Shields recently, and I don't know. I opened up in a conversation with the dude, just like we were just talking, and it just flowed into a natural conversation. And he's talking about how he was prior police estate over. He worked his 35 years in the police force. Is that necessarily a conversation that people have? No, absolutely not. And even then, we had an entire conversation in regards to just seeing some awful people. Seeing crackheads, seeing druggies, talking about my situation with the person blocking me in. And it's like, no, I mean, firearms don't solve the issue. To which one of them, one of his other coworkers chimed in and was just like, yeah, I mean, I teach an instructional course, and I had to explain to this dude, if homeboy steals your TV and he leaves, you can't chase him down. You can't chase him down with your Mossberg or your Beretta, right? You can't do that because it becomes into legal situations, legal things, right? But you don't see that a lot anymore. And I think that from my own experience, as somebody who can kind of just be in a room and people want to interact with, whether that's in a good way, like that Shields employee, absolutely awesome. I love going to Shields. I think they have one of the best in my opinion, they have one of the best firearms purchases practices I have seen in the state of Idaho. And I've commended them for it, absolutely, because they walk you out to the door with your firearm. Other places just kind of, hey, here's your thing, smack you on the ass, you're good to go, and you can still walk around inside the store. I was debating on doing a whole video on it. But a lot of people, either they're just so in their own echo chamber, they once again prove that people aren't allowed, they're not able to be wrong, and if you show information that is contrary to them being wrong, they just assume that you're attacking them. I think a lot of people do want that kind of communication, that kind of dialogue, that back and forth, something that we haven't seen since the virus and has been just an ever-increasing problem. Am I thinking, Ted Kaczynski Unabomber status where, technology is, bad? No. I mean, technology is a force like anything else. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be neutral. It's depending on how you use it. So it's really interesting to just see parallels that this person is going through in regards to the cult that they were experiencing, and even just modern mundane things that we see. It's just things to think about.
Life things that most people take for granted, like graduating college, buying a house, having a successful job, etc., seem like fairy tales to me because nobody in my life growing up did those things. I don't have anybody who can give me advice on how to accomplish those normal life tasks because nobody I grew up with or our parents did any of those things. I feel pretty lost. I'm still picking pieces of this cult out of my identity, and it's exhausting. Edit. Just wanted to add a random artifact from my upbringing. I went to see Hunger Games, Catching Fire recently, and I broke down crying in the middle of it because I had a sudden realization that I grew up believing that the sort of apocalyptic depressing scenario played out in the Hunger Games was an inevitable outcome in the future. Not the actual Hunger Games, obviously, but the extreme government control, oppression of the people, dire social circumstances, etc. It made me feel very alone in that moment, sitting with the knowledge that I was viewing the very thing my childhood nightmares were made of, and knowing that nobody around me could possibly comprehend the reason for my tears.
And that's incredibly valid. Like, that is a very traumatizing experience. That is a very hard-hitting experience. Just to see the embodiment of your fears, the embodiment of things that, for all intents and purposes, your very being was against or trying to prevent or be ready for. Absolutely.
Throwaway because only a handful of people closest to me know this happened. It's very difficult for me to talk about, but maybe it's time. Note, I'm 27 now, and this all happened when I was 18 and 19. I wasn't raised in church. My parents grew up with very religious parents and didn't want to force anything on us. That being said, in high school, I got very curious about God, religion, etc. I started dating a guy when I was in 9th grade, who took me to church with him. He was a Southern Baptist, so I kept going. We broke up, but that's important because that was my first experience with the church. I just wanted to do the right thing. This isn't what the story's about, it's just a little background. Fast forward to my senior year. I started dating a guy in my grade. He was always popular and pretty mysterious. Everyone knew he was religious, but didn't know what kind. They knew because his mom would attend our choir concerts always wearing long skirts, no jewelry or makeup, and had her hair in a bun. His best friend didn't even know what church he had went to, but told me that they didn't have a TV and weren't allowed to watch movies. I was very nervous to ask him what church he went to, even though we were dating and I figured after 3 months I should know. I had asked him a few times to go with me to the Baptist church, but he always declined. Finally, I got up the courage. I asked him what church he went to, and he only replied with, "You should see for yourself." I was excited. I get to be part of it and his life. He invited me to his church. I went out and bought a long skirt and threw my hair up. I figured I should be respectful and dress like his mother. He picked me up that following Wednesday evening and drove me to the meeting. It was at a Holiday Inn conference room. Everyone was very old except for me, my boyfriend, his younger brother, and 2 toddlers. The meeting, that's what they called it, was run by 2 very elderly women from Ireland. Pretty sure it was Ireland. I could barely understand them, but the Bibles they used were normal Bibles, so I didn't feel too uncomfortable.
There's my intrusive thought. I, for some reason, heard Ireland, and somehow my brain went to Chef's parents, Chef from South Park, Chef's parents in the Scottish Highlands. Yes, I know, two separate entities. I'm aware. I'm half expecting these elderly women to just say, "I need about 350." No. And then I looked and said, "Wait a minute. That's no Bible. And I looked at it again, and it was a goddamn 3-story lizard from the late Cretaceous period. And it said, I need about tree fitted. God damn it, monster. Oh my God, I am off the rails tonight. I am so sorry.
They had a hymnal and they just said hymns on the front. Everyone sang a cappella. There were never instruments.
A cappella.
It was a very strange evening, but because they used a typical Bible, I figured it was fine. I eventually stopped attending the Baptist church I was part of and went strictly to my boyfriend's meetings. Wednesdays were held at the Holiday Inn, and Sundays were held in various friends' houses. Every member was called a friend. The meeting.
No, actual South Park status. I'm not your friend, pal. I'm not your pal friend. I'm not your friend, buddy. I'm not your buddy. Insert thing here. Dude, no, stop. Don't call us a family. Don't call us friends, okay? I am here, okay? If you start calling me, like, your bro, okay, like, there's a difference. Like, actually calling me bro. Like, someone in chat just like, bro, really? Like, yeah, bro, right? There's a kind of that casual nature. Do not call me a member of the family or call me a friend, okay? I hate that shit when jobs do it, right? Oh, but we're all a family here. Yeah, so as a family member, why am I working excessive overtime and don't have to sign up for overtime, but everyone else has to sign up for overtime and mysteriously gets off on time? Interesting. Very family-like. Yes, I agree.
Weren't huge, maybe 10 to 20 people. Each fall and spring, they held conventions. They would be held on someone's farm and would be every friend in the state and sometimes a few surrounding states. Mm-hmm. Those were very, very big. We would stay in quarters and listen to people speak about the Bible. You also had a chance to stand up and read a verse that meant something to you. This all happened very slowly and over the course of 2 years or so. I must have been obsessed with just trying to do the right thing and follow Jesus because I didn't notice that I was being brainwashed. He took my virginity. I ended up living with him. I have no idea to this day how that transition even happened or if my parents wondered where I was. My parents were in the middle of a messy divorce and honestly probably didn't notice I was gone.
Bro, okay, but like at no point were you just like, yo, but where's our child? Like, where are they at? At no time did you just think, yo, hey, they're kind of just like out. Like, where did they go? Dude. It really doesn't seem like it's a high bar to be a good parent. Good God, they're making this seem like it's on Everest.
My boyfriend's mom didn't believe in using hospitals or doctors and took a holistic approach to her family's and my health. She had me on different vitamins every day of the week. I was already very skinny, but over time lost even more weight. I probably got down to 80 or 90 pounds. She also had me iodine drops under my tongue every day. This all led me to being severely underweight, and I had stopped sleeping almost completely. I think the doctors said it was all the vitamin B12 in my system. While in a hazy state of mind, I ended up getting baptized in a lake at one of the conventions. Shortly thereafter, when we went home, I started having panic attacks. Everything from this time is such a blur to me. Such a blur. I eventually had one big panic attack that threw me over the edge. I had a complete mental breakdown. I remember a few things very vividly. I tried to read the Bible to calm down and I couldn't read anymore. Everything was just shapes and blobs. This led to more crying. My dad remarried 2 weeks after the divorce and married a woman named Nikki. I was convinced they were both Satan because of this. I tried to jump off a very high hill near the house I was staying at. I would have, at the very least, broken many bones, if not died. I thought I was already dead and was convinced their house was a coffin and they were burying me outside and my soul was overhearing it all. I guess they realized that something was wrong and probably didn't want to be liable because they found my dad's number and told him to come get me.
So, God, this is just a compounding effect, especially if there was potential fasting involved, staying up late nights. I mean, high stress environment. I mean, there's a number of things here. This is an actual breakdown.
I fought going and cried and screamed, but my dad took me back to his house. I didn't sleep that night again and thought his house was the Twin Towers and I was stuck inside as they were falling down. I started seeing small rainbows everywhere. My brain was fucked, you guys. The next day, my dad and stepmom took me to the behavioral mental hospital. I remember it was the day Steve Irwin died because my dad told me in the waiting room, and I thought for sure that he murdered Steve Irwin, and that's how he knew he was dead.
That is a savage breakdown. That is rough. Like when the mind breaks, it shatters. It is absolutely gone.
But it was on the news in the waiting room. Either way, I stayed in an acute wing of the hospital for 2 weeks. They took my vitals several times a day and night. I had to go to group therapy sessions and drink Ensure all day until I was finally up to a healthy weight.
Also being underweight as well. There's definitely some aspect of that like there's definitely malnutrition there, 100%.
That man and his family fucked me up.
Yes.
I hope I never see them again. It's almost 10 years later, and I have nightmares about them still. I had one last night, actually. They're mostly just present in the dream. I had the courage to finally try and Google the name of the cult. It took some digging, but they're called 2x2s. Sorry this was so long. So much happened to me. This is just all I can remember.
No, and that's incredibly brave of someone to actually come out and just say, hey, the thing, even if it's a throwaway account, right? Like, and I respect that, especially when you're still having nightmares about that. That is a traumatic situation, and no one should ever have to go through that. No one should ever have to break like that to be taken advantage of like that.
And alright, that wraps up Reddit cult encounters. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Would you like to see more? Would you like to see something different? I don't know. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and just let me know what you think. What you want to see in the future or different. Anyways, thank you for watching to the end of the video. It means a lot. And make sure you remember to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps out the channel a lot. And thank you for watching again. And yeah, anyways, until next time, see ya.
So in the description down below, I have absolutely linked the original video here, as well as his original channel here. I have linked them for your convenience, that way you're able to find it as easily as you can. Try to break down those barriers that React content, somehow puts up. I can attest firsthand on someone who was up 24 hours recently. It got to the point about hour 27. I was playing Elite Dangerous and the Thargoid Wake Trails. I thought I was playing Sea of Thieves and that those were shorelines. When I get sleep deprived, people, well, why don't you smoke? Why don't you do any sort of recreational stuff, right? Look, when I get sleep deprived, I'm already just in a different reality, okay? I don't need anything to either expedite that or make the situation worse, okay? If I want to have hallucinations at this point, I will just stay up for over 36 hours, okay? It's not going to be a fun time. But, I mean, this is one of those things I feel is, it's very hard to talk about stuff like this, not just from our interaction concept, but as a coming forward with some of your stories and stuff like that. It is a very real thing in the world, and people unfortunately suffer for this. People suffer while, the people at the top, like in that one that was mentioned, right? They still get medical treatment despite them being a holistic medicinal approach, right? It's not fair. And while people may say life is fair, I feel that we can do our best to start holding people accountable, to educate each other, to work together. But even then, you could argue that I'm trying to engage in cult-like tactics. I'm trying to appeal to your ethos, pathos, and logos and pitch a narrative, right? Which is not it's not an inaccurate statement, right? Appealing to ethos, pathos, and logos to get a point across. But at the end of the day, you are an individual. You are your own adult. You're your own independent person, and you may disagree with everything I've said in this video. You may be part of one of these cults and disagree with me inherently, or you might agree with what I say, or maybe you might tangentially agree with only some things. At the end of the day, be your own individual and do the best you can each and every day. But that'll do it for me this time. Thank you, everyone, for watching. It's been a really cool Spooktober so far, and I'll see you in the next one.